Good morning and welcome to this video. Today in this video, I'll be talking about the NAAC accreditation process. And this video is going to be very exhaustive and quite in detail. And particularly this session or this lecture or what you call a presentation has been designed keeping in mind that what the top leadership of any higher education institution or a university should know about the process of NAAC, that is National Assessment and Accreditation Council. What are the processes and what exactly is the purpose of NAAC accreditation and why it is essential for any higher education institution to go for NAAC accreditation. So without much wasting of time, I'll start the presentation. If we look into the existing scenario and understand what exactly we are going through, you'll find that the student population is expected to cross 140 million, approximately 14 crores by 2030. There are 1,043 universities, and together they cater approximately 40 million, that is 4 crore students. If you look into the statistics published by All India Survey of Higher Education 2020, you will find that there are 1,043 universities, 42,343 colleges, and 11,779 standalone institutions. That's a quite substantial number. But surprisingly, despite this number may look very impressive, India still needs 150 or maybe 1,500 plus universities to cater the needs of student population, which clearly means that there is a demand for high quality graduates having necessary workplace skills and specialist knowledge for operating at a global standard. Now, these are the phrases which I'm going to use during the course of the presentation are not of mine. These are basically taken from various, documents which UGC has published over a period of time with reference to the new education policy 2020. So National Assessment and Accreditation Council, let's understand why we should, or higher education institution or the government wants that higher education institutions should get NAAC accreditation, in particularly the UGC. So I'll be talking about the why of National Assessment and Accreditation Council from their perspective. Because see, there is a lack of operating procedures and the processes, what we call it as a statement of operating procedures. So because you see that 1,043 universities, there are many private universities, each private university starts their own level of standards, their own belief and their own processes. So it is very difficult to have a standard operating procedure, across all the universities. Second is lack of transparency in academic and administrative process. That's the biggest problem the UGC has to face when it comes to benchmarking the quality. Because each university has their own standards of examination, assessment, and on top of it, even the governance is very, very different. So the second requirement from the UGC or from the government point of view, if you look at, government wants that there should be transparency in academic and administrative processes. Third is the lack of academic rigor, that is learning resources and pedagogy. I'll be moving, as I move ahead with the presentation, I'll be talking. You may find most of the universities talks about that they have one of the state of the art best infrastructure, be in terms of classroom. They talk about air conditioning. They talk about various fast food joints in the campus, like you have McDonald's and things like that. But what exactly the academic rigor is looking for is the learning resources, not the complementing resources, right? And what type of a pedagogy you are going to follow. And above all, fourth point is the poor governance, that's the leadership. You'll find that the highest attrition rate is in the private university when it comes to the, faculties are concerned. And the most scaring part, which universities are ignoring, and the government is of great concern, is the underutilization of research and development funds, which are being allocated by the government. Now, most of the research and development funds are being used by the IITs and IIMs and other government institutions, right? State and central level. But government not only allocates funds for research and development to the private universities, to the government and state and central universities, they also want that the private university should join hand in contributing towards the research and development activities. So just to share figures with you, the budgetary allocations of fund for research and development higher education institution for the financial year 21-22 was 14,793 crores. I'm talking from the budget figures which I've taken from the budgets, which dropped down, which went down in 2022 and 23 to 14,217 crores. So all these points contributed to the one common fact that for any monitoring or regulating body, it is difficult to benchmark the quality of education, particularly in higher education institutions and universities. If you look at as I have spoken about, there is an underutilization of the research and development fund allocated by government. I'm talking about the Department of Science and Industrial Research. The percentage which went down from 2019 to 2020 to 2020-21 is, remarkably, very high. From 76%, it went down, further to 59%. Now we'll talk about the NAAC Assessment and Accreditation process, because it is very essential that we should understand what exactly NAAC is going to do and how we should approach the NAAC Assessment and Accreditation process. So as I mentioned earlier, the NAAC accreditation is the benchmarking for effectiveness of academic and administrative processes in higher educational institutions. Now, when I say academic and administrative processes, what I'm trying to say is, normally from my experience, I can say both these academic and administrative processes are not very well defined, because that's the area where the governance or the leadership do not want to have a very stringent processes. For example, academic flexibility in terms of how they will assess, when they will assess, what should be the criteria for assessed, how they will teach, what will be the pedagogy. This is all kept very, very flexible. Administrative processes, when it comes to taking admissions, refund of fees, these are all not very, very clearly defined and documented. Next is NAAC accreditation is highly structured and a process driven, which clearly means that what NAAC is trying to, or the what UGC or the governing body for the higher education institution want, that your processes should be very, very structured. When I say structured, that means to any process, whether it is academic or administrative, there are certain criteria of inputs which will be processed, and there is a definite output which will be generated. No ifs and buts and no manipulations here and there. You can have many conditions to it. You can, when you are defining the structure of the process, you can have so many conditions, but based on those conditions, the inputs will be processed and the results will be generated in the form of output. Now, NAAC accreditation its overall objective is to streamline the standard operating procedures, so that all the universities across the country will have a standard platform, or they have a standard operating procedures. Because now when you talk, because government is talking about the new education policy, they're very, very beautifully designed, but the problem comes when it's coming to implementation. So they need to have that standards across the country, so that the implementation of National Education Policy 2020 becomes very, very effective. And the most important fact which I wanted to highlight, as I have mentioned earlier also, that the 70% of the NAAC assessment criteria are focused on holistic development of the students, the primary stakeholder of higher education institutions. And 30% of the NAAC assessment criteria are focused on institutional and academic excellence. Now look at the difference between the two. The weightage, if you see the weightage, then you can prioritize your higher education institutions processes. Governing or the controlling bodies of higher education institutions from the government point of view are mainly concerned in protecting the interest of the primary stakeholders, that is the students. Whereas if you talk in terms of higher education institutions and university across the country as of now, they are just the reverse. You will find that they have focused 30% on the holistic development of students, and 70% they focus on their institutional and what you talked about academic, not excellence exactly per se, but they talk in terms of they have an incubation center, they have yoga center, they have all type of infrastructure they are talking about, but how this infrastructure is going to contribute towards the development of the holistic development of the students, that's a big miss. So that's the important criteria I wanted to emphasize, especially the leadership of the private institutions and the higher education institutions. They must focus that, see, again, your primary stakeholder is your student. So anything which revolves around the students will be highly appreciated by the NAAC accreditation and assessment process. I mean, anything or any processes or any activities or any career concerned work which these higher institutions are doing for the benefit or for the development of the students will definitely be rating high in terms of NAAC assessment and accreditation process. I need not to talk about it. This was a notification for mandatory assessment of an accreditation of higher education institution way back in 2012. Now, I'll talk more about NAAC Assessment and Accreditation Council in terms of objective. So the objective of NAAC is to the conformance to the standard of quality in terms of performance excellence. Now, if you have, I have done my presentation earlier on national education policy also. They're talking more about in terms of academic performance, excellence, quality, excellence, so on and so forth. So if I consider all these aspects, or considering all these aspects, we have just 9 criteria or the points which I would like to highlight. First is educational processes and the outcome, which I'm talking indirectly talks about what methods, how you're going to do, and whom for you are going to do. Curriculum scope and coverage, how will you design the curriculum, right? That means what you are going to teach and why you wanted to teach that thing. Teaching learning processes, delivery, what will be delivered to the students and how things will be delivered to the students. Faculty profile, intellectual resources, exactly who all will be the one who would be responsible for designing and delivery of what are the things or what educational processes you have wanted to convey to your students. Research and development, that's again a very important area. That's innovation. We're talking about innovation, entrepreneurship, and the outreach. I'll talk about the outreach later because most of the higher education institutions have wrongly interpreted the word what is outreach. Let's talk about the infrastructure. I'm sure everybody understands the physical resources. Learning resources, again, is a big miss in these higher education institutions. What learning resources means, the intellectual capital you have, the type of faculty you are recruiting. And then you have the digital resources. That is how well your library is equipped with the databases, other resources which students can use at their convenience for enhancing their learning processes. It's the most important, that is leadership and that's governance. I'm talking in the sense, what's the leadership and administration? That is, who are the people who are running the show exactly, who has a vision, what is the mission, what is the purpose of higher education institutions, how are you fulfilling those purposes, that's all. Then student facilities and the services, that is facilities and amenities which you are going to provide to the students, that these are basic amenities, right? So if you consider from the National Education Policy 2020, the criteria which I have talked about, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9 have a tremendous impact, right? So all these criteria which I have talked about, from the conformance to the standards of quality in terms of performance excellence, these are directly connected with the National Education Policy. So conformance to the standards of quality, what exactly NAAC means, that is quality in terms of resourcefulness in internal academic and administrative processes. That is resourceful in the sense that your internal academics and administrative processes are very enriching. Quality sustenance in internal academic and administrative processes, your internal academic and administrative processes are sustainable, right? And the quality enhancement in internal academics and administrative processes. If we try to understand all the three, what exactly NAAC wants to emphasize, or what exactly the government of India want higher education institution and university for conformance to the standards of quality, they're talking about extensive deployment of information communication tools and technology so that your internal academic and administrative processes can become scalable and also robust. Now, Conformance, if you talk about, then it means that achieving continuous quality improvement and enhanced performance through the effective implementation of academic and administrative internal processes and control. Now, this is I have taken from the National Education Policy. National Education Policy also emphasized one important aspect is institutionalizing and internalizing the culture of quality. That means you as an institution, you have to internalize consciously about the quality in whatever the processes you are implementing across your academic and administrative processes. So any initiative which you take, you should not be taken for the purpose of fulfilling the norms. It should be initiative should be taken for the adherence to the quality and standards, for improvement of the quality, for extending support to the learning centric environment where you are providing where you're creating an environment which is very, very conducive for learning of the learning processes, right? So this is again a second point I've taken from the National Education Policy. So what should be the approach like? So if you are an institution and or higher education institution and you have not thought of NAAC and you wanted to go for NAAC accreditation, so what you should be doing it. The approach is what should be ideally be done. So that means you must understand the NAAC guidelines. You can refer to the website, go to the university, NAAC university manual, institution manual, so on and so forth. Read it carefully, understand what you have to do it in terms of accreditation. Second is what can be done with the existing support and facility. Now, based on what NAAC requires, you do a self-assessment and find out where you stand in terms of the criteria, what NAAC wants, and what criteria you have in terms of academic and administrative processes. And then finally, what additional facilities and resources are needed. That's what is the gap and how you're going to fulfill the gap. So what you should focus on, if you look into the slide, it says things that matters. That is, I wanted to find out what exactly are the points or the things that will matter to me, and what are the things that I can control. And in between, at the intersection point, is the level where you have to focus yourself, right? So if I talk about the framework, so that you have a holistic idea, the distribution of criteria, that is of assessment criteria, will have key indicators is followed by metrics. So criteria is a bigger one. Key indicators, that there are certain parameters on the basis of which they want the data from your institution. And the last is there are certain metrics which are again qualitative metrics, quantitative metrics, right? So I'll put it this way, that there are 7 criteria they're talking about. Then number of indicators are 34, and the metrics, if you talk about qualitative metrics, they call it as QIM, that's 36. And there is a focus more on quantitative metrics, that is 79. I have mentioned earlier also, the focus is on 70% student holistic development and 30% on academic and institutional development. So if you total it up, the total metrics for which the university or a higher education institution has to submit the data is about 115. See, these 115 metrics in 2 categories, if you divide it, the qualitative and quantitative. So you'll find that the quantitative has 70% weightage, which means that whatever data you're going to produce, or whatever facts and figures, I will put it that the figures you're going to produce will have a weightage of 70%. And the qualitative assessment or the written description or peer committee visit will have a weightage of 30%. Let's move ahead with the quality indicator framework, and as I have mentioned about it, so let's see what all are the criteria are there that I have spoken about. So any higher education institution will be assessed for 1,000 points, right? So there are 7 criteria: C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, and C7. I'll read it for you. The curriculum aspect, the teaching, learning, and evaluation, research, innovations, and extension, infrastructure and learning resources, student support and progression, government, leadership and management, institutional values, and the best practices. Now, I've given the weightage in front of this in a next column. So if you look into it, I'll show you that. So when we talk about these processes, so let's see in terms of what exactly they are talking about. So when NAAC says that they will be assessing, or they will be checking your curricular aspects through the criteria 1, they're talking about what are the academic offerings that a higher education institution has to offer. We'll see what are the metrics are there in this criteria. Second is teaching, learning, and evaluation. Here, the NAAC assessment is primarily focused on how the academic curriculum will be delivered, right? If you talk about the third, that is research, innovation, and extension, here they're talking about whatever you are doing it for in terms of achieving excellence, what practical application that excellence has in terms of what research activities your institution is conducting through the students, through the faculty, and how well those research activities are incubated, and what are the how you are using the outreach program for enhancing or sensitizing your students and faculty for various social issues, which eventually helps you in innovating and designing new solutions. That's the purpose of research, innovations, and extension. C4, if you talk about, that's the infrastructure and learning resources. That is what type of capabilities your higher education institution has. As per the new education policy, if you talk, they say that the entire higher education system will now be divided into 3 categories. So you say that whether you are a teaching university institution, whether you are a research oriented institution, or whether you're a combination of both, right? So you need to specify all these aspects. C5 talks about student support and progression, that is the holistic development of the students. Governance, leadership, and management, again, is for the administration. And institutional values and best practices, that is how your higher education institution is different, or what is the competitive advantage that you will enjoy in times to come, or you are enjoying as of now. Now, carefully, I want you all to carefully look at the distribution of points. If you realize that infrastructure and learning resources in terms of capability, where maximum focus is given in terms of air conditioning classrooms, auditorium, gymnasium, swimming pool, everything, they will be assessed only for 100 points. And where there is a maximum weightage, like say, for instance, curriculum aspects, teaching, learning, evaluation, research, innovation, and extension, grossly we are missing, because first, it's very difficult to get the trained, qualified and trained faculty, because for that, it doesn't come, it comes with a price tag. And then your educational policy, your institution policies are like HR policies are like that they would not like to stay. Highly politically motivated environment, where it is difficult for faculty to contribute in terms of teaching, research. So all these points are there. So my main submission or suggestion would be that instead of focusing in creating the infrastructure, try focusing on creating the intellectual infrastructure. So again, as I have spoken about what we should do, we'll be focusing on here. So there are 2 ways which we can do it. Now, approach can be, if you talk about, I'm talking from my experience point of view. I had the chance to work with one of the leading universities in Kanpur before COVID for their NAAC Assessment and Accreditation process. So I found from there, I learned that this approach, this criteria, the 2 things, one is the causation and the other is effectuation. That's basically from the entrepreneurship development I'm talking point of view. These are the theories which are given by Saras Parsarthi, or a lady who was doing research on entrepreneurship development in terms of effectuation. So I'll talk about first, causation. Now, if this, then that will happen. So normally you will find that when a management says that we wanted to go for NAAC accreditation, and they form a team and they say that, okay, if people start preparing for it, generally you will find, and from my observation, everybody is, all the people who are involved in the NAAC process, they start talking in terms of so many things are required. If we do all those things, only then we can go for NAAC. That is, I put it this way, that's a blackmailing to the management, giving an idea to them that these are the things which we must do it. Now, management here has the responsibility of understanding the requirements from the assessment weightage criteria. That means if somebody is saying that, if you are being as a head of the institution, or maybe as a chairperson, you are told that having a gymnasium is an essential requirement from NAAC point of view, then you need to find out what is the total percentage weightage across the 1000 point. So that helps you in deciding and prioritizing your, work or your activities. So when I say causation, most of the higher education institution authorities who are exactly given the responsibility of working on NAAC, they believe in causation, which means they say that if management has to do this, only then this can happen. That means here we are talking about desired outcome is based on planning. That is more of resource, more of commitment of resource, more of planning is done. And based on the planning, we are saying that these will be the desired outcomes will come, right? I ideally suggest that instead of causation, there has to be effectuation, which says that desired outcomes are based on small actions. And let's see what we have as of now. Can we start taking action based on what we exactly have now, and then we build upon it, right? So rather than, so normally what happens when you are, I've seen in that university, there was in the research criteria 3, they talk about research. And they say that every higher education institution should have a research policy. So it was decided and in a meeting that we should have a research policy. Now, honestly speaking, if you talk about research policy, it simply means what type of research activities an institution is going to undertake, where they are going to get these funds for the purpose of fulfilling the research requirements. Are they going to take funds from the government? Will they be taking government projects? So and so forth. How it was interpreted on the basis of causation that we need to develop a research incentive policy for the faculty. They got it done, they got it approved. Based on that policy, whatever criteria they have decided for giving incentive to the faculty, few of the faculty who were responsible for this criteria 3 got all those monetary benefits. And later on, I shouldn't say that, but still they're struggling for getting the process of NAAC accreditation. So that's the difference between, you can understand the causation and effectuation. So if we keep thinking in terms of that if we do this, only then this can happen, that's a wrong approach. I would strongly say from NAAC point of view, start building upon what you have as of now. First, you complete that, what you have as of now, then you plan for what you need, right? I hope I'm making my point clear. So my focus from the effectuation point is what can be done with the existing support and facility rather than imagining or daydreaming about what should be done. So if you look into it again, because this will help in understanding, that's the quality indicator framework, C1 to C7. I'll talk about now gradually how we can do it from following the effectuation principle. So here the most important point, what I have discussed earlier from this example, is that objectivity is the key. No individual subjective interpretation should be encouraged. It should be debated. People should be allowed to, whosoever you are considering as a part of the NAAC team, they should come up with their ideas, or they should submit their proposals with an objective frame of mind. It should not be that normally what happens that the management team is being created for which individual 4 or 5 department heads are given the responsibility of C1, somebody else is given C2, C3. Each such constitution of a group feels that their criteria is the most important in the university, and which is wrong. If you look into it, all aspects, from C1 to C7, all of them are equally important. You cannot say that I have to only focus on research. Now, why I'm saying so? You will find that normally these 1043 universities are not all located in the metropolitan cities or in a prime location where all these facilities can be made available. So NAAC wants that you should focus on those areas where you have achieved excellence, right? And we will appreciate the fact that you are striving to do your best, and wherever you are lacking, you will be given an opportunity to improve upon those areas. But what we are trying to think is that NAAC says that, okay, all these points are important. I say that NAAC is a very strategic process. You have to assess your strength, where you, for example, if I'll put it this way, if an organization, university or a higher education institution is located in, say, let's say, for instance, outskirts of village area of, let's say, for some Bihar, right? And they have established a university in a tribal area, and now they are doing reasonably well. They have come up with good infrastructure, and teachers are also there, thing like that. So if you look into it, their criteria 3, they may not be very good in research, they may not be very good in other activities, but their outreach activities is the strongest point, and that's the competitive differentiator. That is, they have tried to work for the upliftment of the societal area where their university is located. So if they do not understand that, that's their problem, right? So we have to see that all C1 to C7 should be viewed objectively. There should not be any subjective assessment based on individual persons thinking that whosoever the criteria they're looking after is the only important aspect, right? So let's put the weightage. I have spoken about it. So if you see that curriculum aspect gets 15% weightage out from the 1,000 points, teaching, learning, and evaluation 20%, research innovation gets 25%, infrastructure and learning resources 10%, student support progression 10%, governance, leadership, and management 10%, and institutional values and best practices 10%. Now, as of now, without understanding what these are, if you look into it, as if you're heading a higher education institution, you can easily find that the C1 can be easily, accomplished. C2 can also be, to a certain extent. C3 might be difficult because it depends that what type of intellectual resource you have. C4, again, because you are into this higher education institution, you must have done a reasonable amount of work, I presume. C5 is also within your reach. C6 and C7 definitely in your reach, because you are the one who are going to implement it. Let's talk in detail about the criteria so that you get an idea what I have spoken about. The curriculum aspect, if you're talking about the first key performance indicator they're talking about, that is the curriculum design and development. The next is academic flexibility. This next new education policy talks about it very, very strongly. Curriculum enrichment and feedback system. Now, what I have seen is feedback system is for the sake of the feedback system. And look at the marks, it is 20 out of 150 points. So this means that, again, I'm saying it, 70% weightage is being given for the student development and progression. Do not ignore even this 20% marks over here. So if you have a very good, strong feedback mechanism system within your institution, you can be sure that you get 20 points from this particular key performance metrics, right? Then when you talk about the C2, it talks about student enrollment profile, that is variety or the diversity. Then second is student diversity. Then you have teaching learning process. Then you have faculty profile and equality, evaluation process and reforms, student performance, learning outcomes, student satisfaction and feedback survey. Again, you will find it over here as 30 points. Now, the point is, if you look into it, this is about the assessment criteria. When you say student profile or enrollment, you're talking about what level of students you are intaking for a particular program, right? Are you taking any admission entrance test and things like that? So we'll talk about all these points in detail. Research innovation, if you talk about promotion and research and facilities, right? What type of research facilities or infrastructure you are providing your faculty and students to go about? Resource mobilization for the research. Your institution has created a fund or a corpus for resource purposes, or how you are going to do about it. Then you have an innovation ecosystem. Now, this 30 points is basically that, okay, fair enough, I can talk in terms of my examination, my assessment, the way I conduct or way I take teaching pedagogy, all are very, very formative, and that talks about the information ecosystem. Then another important aspect is research, publication, and awards, that is for 100 marks. And consultancy and extension for 60, and collaboration is for 20. Now, these days, I am noticing that if you look into the social media platforms, especially LinkedIn, all the higher education institutions, universities, chairman, and vice chairpersons, they're flaunting about that we have got a memorandum of understanding signed with IIT, memorandum of understanding signed with this institution, that institution, abroad, national, international, you name it, and they're doing it. But when you talk in terms of collaboration, NAAC says that, are these collaborational functional? When you say that you are collaborating with the, say, for instance, any foreign university, what type of collaboration is actually implemented? Your students are going there, their students are coming here, your faculty is going there, their faculty is coming here, or you're both your faculty, their faculty collaborating and writing a research paper. What type of collaboration is there? It is, their NAAC will not consider on the basis of how many patents do you have, or how many copyrights do you have, or how many MOUs you have. All have to be connected. For example, I'll just talk about it here in detail. I've seen that universities talk about that we are, they advertise with 1,000 patents in the name of the, in our name, in flagship, or whatever they call it. Now, when you go for NAAC assessment, NAAC says you are patenting a particular idea or a technology because you feel it is important. If it is important and valuable, then it is your prime responsibility to incubate it, convert it into an entrepreneurial initiative. But what happens is we are getting it patented and filing it, saying that because we have filed, we have 500 or 1,000 patents to our credit, we are very, very innovative. No, it's not. You need to ensure that those patents are incubated well if you want them to be recognized and considered from NAAC point of view. Moving to C4, that is infrastructure and learning resources. You have physical facilities, library as a learning resource, and IT infrastructure has got a 30 points, mind it, and maintenance of infrastructure. So all these things are, need not to talk about. Now, important 100 point is C5 is student support and progression. That is student support. What all activities your higher education institution is doing for supporting the student development. And when you talk about the student progression, that after completing a course from your institution, do you provide them any facility or training or anything which enhances or which allows them to students to have a progression in their career? Next is the student participation and activities. Very interesting. Now, normally people, when NAAC says student participation and activities, they are trying to say that from how well your students have participated in the events and functions organized by the other institutions. How the normally higher education institution is interpreted, they say that we are having an internal and a sports meet. They call it as an annual sports meet, where their students participate, they win, they declare, and they put it up in the NAAC assessment format, where they say that this is our students have. Now, this is not student participation in activities. We are talking about, have your students participated in any national or international debate or national or international sports events? That's what they meant. But again, as I have mentioned earlier, these are very, very subjective interpretation. So please stop doing that. Read and understand and develop a perspective which is very, very objective. You cannot have your personal interpretation declaring it to be the right interpretation. Right? Sixth is institution governance, leadership, and management. Again, it's very important. If you're not careful enough, you will find that the group if you have made responsible for this criteria, will only talk about faculty empowering strategies because that serves their purpose, right? So one has to be, and this has got financial management and resource mobilization. That do the faculty have the power to take a financial decision or not? So one has to be very careful when we are talking about C6. And the C7 is institutional values and social responsibilities. Now, these are the areas which can be used for competitive advantage or a differentiation factor, best practices, what you are doing it, which is different from the other institutions. And that's the institutional distinctiveness. So this was all about the criteria framework. And this is again a slide when I have summarized all the points again for a quick recap. This is again weightage also I've spoken about. Now, if you go in detail, as I have mentioned in the beginning, that the presentation is a long one. So if you look into curriculum aspect, you will find that key metrics is like performance metrics is curriculum design and development is for 50 points, and which you have to design program objective, program specific objective, course outcome, learning outcomes, syllabus, and assessment plan. Now, this is for 20 marks. So normally what happens is that, for example, I am heading this, given the responsibility to look after the C1, that is the curricular aspects. So within under my umbrella, I have 4 or 5 faculty. Without explaining them what is program objective, what is program specific objective, curriculum objective, learning outcomes, and so on and so forth, I tell them that you have to design it for your syllabus. What they do is they cut and paste from the net, and it's available. I mean, and they put it across, right? Without understanding that this is the data which you're going to upload, right? Which will be checked using a software which can easily trace where they have been copied from. I strongly suggest if you look into it, 150 points, you'll find that this 150 point is a good scorer where I can have, I mean, higher education institution, if work seriously, can score a good point. Now, qualitative course focused on employability and entrepreneurship, right? So that is how well your courses are talking in terms of, enhancing the skill. Again, this is national education policy, which talks about skill development and skill enhancement, and how well you have revised your syllabus over a period of time, right? So that's again an important aspect. There's again curriculum aspect. Another factor is academic flexibility, that is introduction of new courses and programs under choice-based credit systems. It's again a new education policy framework which talks about it. These can be easily implemented, provided one has to do a lot of homework in this. Unless and until you are very clear about what is choice-based credit system, it is next to impossible for you to implement it. You may be good in putting it up in a paper, but NAAC is not concerned with paperwork. NAAC is concerned with how well it has been implemented and who all are the students who have enrolled and who are part of this choice-based credit system. The next is curriculum enrichment, that is integration of human values and ethics in the courses, value-added and life skill courses, percentage student enrolled in these courses, and percentage students involved in the field work. That's again important. And the last is feedback. So if you look into it, how I put it, so K1, if I'm talking about curriculum design and development, we can directly see that this is a part of academics. If we talk about academic flexibility, 50 points, again, it is faculty is responsible for doing this work. Curriculum enrichment, this is also within the reach of academics. Feedback system, again, is with the help of academics, HR, and IT. So if you talk in terms of curriculum aspect, 150 points, all are, as per the effectuation principle, can be done without any extra investment or anything, right? See, if you talk about the curricular aspect, that is objective-based education, outcome-based education. That's again very important aspect of new education policy. So which means that if whosoever is given the responsibility of curriculum aspect, designing the curriculum aspect, that team has a very important role, because you cannot outsource or dump it onto this that you please do it and I will just take it. No, someone who has the idea, holistic vision about the university should be given the responsibility for going for this curriculum aspects. Very important criteria, and very, very scoring area. Academic flexibility, choice-based credit system, and curriculum enrichment, that is value-added courses. So why I am talking in detail about this, I wanted that the leadership or the governing team should understand that, okay, fair enough, as far as C1 is concerned, my existing faculty and my existing intellectual resource can contribute and allow me to score high in this area. Now, when we talk about the teaching, learning, and evaluation, you talk about it's for 200 points. It says a student enrollment profile, student diversity, teaching learning process, all these things. I mentioned it. Then you have like, say, for instance, same way I wanted to talk about the teaching, learning, and evaluation process, that how well we can score in this area. Now, if you look into it, student enrollment profile, you need to have admissions process guidelines. If you are not having it, you have to design it, right? So that you will be taking up, what is the OBC policy? You need to have a diverse profile for the enrollment of the students, and what are the criteria, whether you will take admission test or you will take personal interview, but everything has to be very well documented and in the form of a process. Then student diversity, again, it's a part of admission process guidelines. This has to be designed carefully. Teaching learning process, normally higher education institutions have learning management system and e-content curation. Now here, important aspect is, when you talk about teaching learning process, from my experience, I've seen what happened is that where I was with the university, some of the departmental heads were given that responsibility that you are supposed to look after C2. So what they understood is subjectively that teaching learning process is creating video lectures. So now you understand a normal teacher was not very, I would not say bad, who was not very comfortable in, delivering lectures in front of the cameras, were asked to do so because they realized that it is e-content creation. It is not creation, it is curation. That means you provide different sources in the form of electronic or digital resources for curating a content. For example, if I'm talking about entrepreneurship, and if I provide my students 20 URLs and the 20 resources available, which are available free on the internet for their learning purposes, then I'm talking about e-content curation. So NAAC doesn't say that. It says that if you can do it, fair enough. But if you cannot do it, at least your faculty should be able to, curate, find out where are the resources, because with the COVID or pandemic, you will find that most of the top universities, be it Harvard or be it MIT, they're offering free learning courses. So why not your student should get it? At the same time, if you look at Government of India initiative from MOOC courses, that is Swayam and eShodhana, there are many resources available. The point is, NAAC says that your teacher should be aware of which courses are available and how those courses can be integrated or shared with the students so that their learning experiences can be enhanced, right? Faculty profile and quality, that is recruitment policy guidelines. How you're going to, so normally you will find that a fresh MBA without any experience, they will say that, okay, you become an assistant professor. Now that's not the criteria, right? So when you are recruiting a faculty profile from the quality perspective, ensure that their certain orientation program is there for them. You are orienting the faculty, you are asking the faculty to take internal seminars, things like that are all part of the faculty profile and quality. Quality processes and reform, examination policies and guidelines. That's a very important aspect, that how you are conducting exam, how are you assessing the students' performance? Is it, is it at the end of the term or is it formative? I'll talk about it later. Then student performance and learning outcome. Now here it is essential that we should have a matrix of program outcome, program specific outcome, course outcome, learning outcome, competencies, skill mapping with the course outcome and learning outcome, and program assessment plan. Now these are all technical things. You may find it difficult, but still I say that this is within the reach of the faculty who can, if given an opportunity, carefully can do this work. Then student feedback survey is basically responsibility of IT department in the management. So now I have talked about it. You look into it, teaching learning process, content curator, and a development of learning management system is within the reach. Faculty should be given time with the directions and the instructions, and they can do it. And similarly, student performance and learning outcomes, if you talk about, that is, this matrix can also be developed. So out of this 200 points, I feel that, okay, teaching and learning, these are the two areas where we can still do it or contribute ourselves before we start demanding that what is missing. Now we'll talk about the research, innovation, and extension. Now, if you look into it, research, promotion, and facilities. Now look at it, what I was talking about. Research policy on a website. Now, research policy does not mean research incentive policy. That's an internal document. Research policy means clearly what type of research directions this higher education and university or institution is going to take. What type of research projects this university is going, or higher education institution undertakes, where they get their funding from, how this research is in collaboration with the industry. Do they have industry participation in their research activities? How well this research integrates with the industry? Where the funding is coming from, whether it is coming from the private sources, their alumni, or from the government sources. How many projects this university or higher education institution undertakes from the government, that is Department of Science and Technology, DST, Department of Science and Technology, so on and so forth. Again, this is only 2 points. That is, they wanted that this type of a documentation should be done. How it was interpreted, where I was earlier associated, that it is a research incentive policy. That is, if you write one paper, you get 5,000 rupees. If you get a patent, you get 5,000 rupees. This was approved and was implemented in that very organization. I find it very stupid that without understanding the dictum of what NAAC wants, that's what the purpose of objectivity comes into place. You cannot subjectively interpret the criteria based upon your personal interest. You need to see it from the larger perspective. Then again, I don't want to talk. I mean, you can read it. The important aspect is incubation center, number of conferences, seminars, number of awards, innovation research, number of startups, launches for 10 marks, right? And what I was talking about, if you look into it, research grant received from non-government, that is industry, government received from the government, projects funded by the government and non. This 20 marks is absolutely zero as far as most of the higher education institution in the, not the in 2 tiers or maybe in the tier 3. Research, publication, and awards, number of patent published and awarded. See the word clearly, published and awarded. That is, normally we file a patent and they say that it's okay. When you say published, means that you have your idea, your uniqueness, your patent is being contested in the sense in the open market where people can challenge your patent. But normally people do not publish it. They just pay the fees, get the patent registered, and they say that okay, patenting is done. Then number of PhD awarded, this is for 20 marks. Number of research publication in UGC, that is 20. Number of chapters and books published, which is 15. Research paper citation index in Scopus is for 13. Publication H index is for 12 marks. Now again, what I have noticed is that for fulfilling this criteria, what they do is that they hire faculty who are already having a good background of publications. And they say that, the H index is 400, 300, 200. I don't know what they talk about. And they flaunt it on the social media. The problem is NAAC says, NAAC is not saying about or asking for one faculty. They say that how many faculties, that means their purpose is collaborative, not individually. So if you are thinking in terms of hiring faculty, 1 or 2 who are writing papers or who are publishing papers, it makes no sense. You will not be considered good in terms of NAAC assessment criteria. Most of your faculty should be doing it, maybe at least 1 or 2. So, and that's what the purpose of the culture of building up the research orientation within the organization. Consultancy and extension, if you talk about, revenue through consultancy, absolutely zero, because most of the organizations, higher education institutions do not have any consultancy assignment other than IITs and IIM. Outreach program. Now, this is something very important aspect. Extension activities. Now, these are the areas through which you can, do a lot of innovative activities. And if those innovations are quite successful in terms of, contributing towards the society, you go for a lot of entrepreneurial initiatives. That was the real purpose of including outreach and extension activities in the academic context, because government wants that students should be sensitized for the social upliftment of the surroundings where your higher education institution is located. And in this upliftment process, you understand many social problems, and for those social problems, these students are encouraged to find out unique propositions or solutions which can be incubated in terms of starting a business. Then we talk about the collaboration, as I mentioned earlier, about student and faculty exchange program, and then MOUs, national and international. If you consider the C3, you will find that the promotion of research and facilities, that is research policy documentation, yes, it can be, a little tricky, but one has to do it. Resource mobilization for research, faculty research grants, how much you are getting it from government. Innovation ecosystem, that is entrepreneurship development cell. Now, normally you will find that they will flaunt it like that. We have an entrepreneurship development cell, this, that, the other. But the point is, how many projects of entrepreneurial activity has taken place, right? You may not be able to incubate many initiatives or the ventures, but are you creating awareness among the students across the university or across the higher education institution? Are you training your faculty in this domain or not? That's more important. I see this innovation ecosystem not from the physical point of view, but from the psychological perspective of entrepreneurship development. That is where you develop the entrepreneurial mindset of the students as well as the faculty, so that this entrepreneurship development cell becomes functional and activated. Then we have research publications and award, that is the faculty contribution. Consultancy, that is the responsibility of management as well as faculty. Collaboration is again management and faculty. So if you talk in terms of new education policy, resource mobilization, that is, I have already spoken, that is Department of Science and Technology, ICAR, IMR, etc. Entrepreneurship development, that is creating program awareness for faculty and student, is more important. That is, and this, when I say awareness of faculty and program, I'll put it this way. I mean, I'll share an example. I was with that university, or I was talking about, majority of the faculty or the people are not able to differentiate what is invention, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I will not explain it here. I want whoever is watching, just find out what is the difference. Majority of the people or the faculty or the students do not even understand. Very essential for all of us to understand that what is invention, innovation, and entrepreneurship, right? Research, publication, and awards, that's a part of it. So if you look into it, it's criteria 4, we are talking about the physical facilities, that is teaching and learning facilities, that is the audio video classroom. Sport facilities is for 5 marks only. Smart classes, when they talk about, that is classes equipped with the audio video facilities and the internet facility. The library as a learning resource is 30. IT infrastructure gets more point, and maintenance of infrastructure, that is the repairs and services department. Again, C4 is all about the policy decisions. So that management has to decide. Again, this cannot be done as of now. So I'm talking from effectuation point of view. So normally if you give the responsibility, or if you start assessing your institution from the NAAC perspective, people will focus only on these areas. We need more facilities. We need more library books. We need more IT infrastructure. These can be done or will be done, but focus on all those aspects which you can do as of now. Then student support, we are talking about here. You will find that the government scholarship and benefits to the students now. Samaj Kalyan and many other frameworks are there which provide facility to the students. Are your institution, or there is a dedicated team who works for this? Then there are capability enhancement and development programs. Are you providing them certain type of a coaching for IAS and civil services? Student progression talks about the placement. So normally the data which we higher education institution have to provide is relates to the last 5 years, right? Most of the time. So number of students who have cleared civil and defense services, NET, SET, GATE, and other exams. This is also part of it. So basically, if you see from the holistic purpose that any student who comes to your institution or university, you need to keep track of it. Is not all about the activities academically which he's doing at your place, but also all these activities which he or she might pursuing it for his or her career progression also. That's the holistic development NAAC talks about. Student participation in activities. Now, students' awards and merits, these are recognized only, right? Active student council and student representation. In the government, your university administrative and academic process, you need to have student representation, things like that. So if you look into it, what can be done as of now? Student support, again, it's a policy decision. Student progression is about career and placement cell, which is within the reach, very well in place. Student participation in activities, you must have sports and academic activities initiated, not in terms that internal participation, but students going and participating in the state and central level events organized by the government. 6th is governance leadership, institutional vision and leadership. That's very important. Look at it, 30 points. Now, this is all basically about qualitative assessment. One can work very strongly and develop this. Strategy, development, and deployment. And talking about e-governance, transparency, operations. Look at it, e-admissions, that is examination, industry mentor, guest speaker, internship. These are all, most of these institutions are doing it, but without any defined processes. Randomly, they are doing it. That's the problem. NAAC wants you to streamline it. Faculty empowering strategies I have spoken about, financial systems, and internal quality assurance. If you realize institutional vision and leadership, it's a policy documentation. Documentation means it can be done. Strategic development and employment, again, it's a policy documentation. Faculty empowering strategies, it's again a policy documentation. Financial management and resource mobilization, again, it's a policy decision. And internal quality assurance cell, that is IQAC and academic audit. For IQAC, I made a small video. I'll again share it because normally people don't understand what exactly IQAC is, and they again subjectively interpret it depending upon availability of the things at their convenience, which is wrong. Institutional values and the best practices, you will find that, institutional values and social responsibilities, best practices, and then these are again strategic policy documentation, positioning and policy documentation. These are all part of, qualitative assessment. Now I'll just share you a small quiz with you. You guess the NAAC rating based on the information given below. This particular higher education institution has filed and received 1,000 patents in the last 10 years. That means it has established over a period of 10 years and it has received 1,000 patents. As per Scopus, the total number of publications stands out to be 1,850 and the citation at 25,752. Means this in 1,850 articles, publications, the number of citations have gone to 25,752. 75H index, that is 75 research papers have been cited 75 times. NIRF rating 2021, All India rank top 100 among 100 universities. India Today ranked 19th India's best private universities. Great Place to Work certification in 2020, QS iGauge E-Lead certification, e-learning excellence for academic digitization. Atal Innovation ranking is GOI, that is 6 to 25. National and international associations, not many MOUs, and all faculty holding doctorate degree with strong research acumen. I want you to guess the NAAC grading. I mean, according to all these criteria, they should get A, B, C, A++, whatnot. I'm sure all of you would have been said A++, but let's see how NAAC has assessed it. NAAC rating based on the information given was B+. Very, very surprising. That's what I wanted to highlight. The reason was, though the patents were 1,000, but they were not published. None of the patents or innovations were incubated. They were all, this chaiwala has started a new trend. You say that I'm starting a cafeteria. My students have started a cafeteria in the campus itself, and that's an e-startup. And that's not a startup. Startup is basically a technological venture which is waiting to expand its wings and scale up. That's a startup, right? Publications were restricted to a few domains, departments, and faculty. Like, say, for instance, most of the publications are in the pharmaceutical department, right? And only few faculties. So it clearly indicates that you are hiring people, paying a good amount of money to a certain number of faculty, encouraging them or requesting them to go for publication. Few faculties were only getting their work published repeatedly, right? Then private rankings are paid promotions. So they will, NIRF ranking, if you see India Today ranking, these are all paid promotions. National and international MOUs were not operational. They were not functional. Nothing was happening. Only a piece of paper has been signed. So what lessons can we learn is that from this particular institutions, higher education institution, it's a university, very popular university on the social platform. Number of patent filed doesn't define your innovativeness. That's very clear. One should appreciate the difference between invention and innovation. NAAC focuses on inclusive and cooperative behavior, and they rewarded for that. Exclusivity is not important. Research is important, but remember, it is not the only important criteria. Normally, we feel that research is the only important. Definitely, it is important, but that is not the only. There are other. So if you see weightage of research and development activities, only 25% of the 1,000 points. So now, why I'm not talking more about it? Because most of the universities are in the outskirts of the city limits, or maybe not in a tier 1 or tier 2 cities. But in that case, where they will get this type of things, they will require time, they require resources for mobilizing the research. So till that time, that doesn't mean that they will not go for NAAC accreditation. They can go for NAAC accreditation by working on the other strong points or the other strengths which they have. MOUs, if you're signing and keeping it in a file, makes no sense to the NAAC. They need to be functional and operational. And last and the most important, as I have mentioned earlier, student is the most important stakeholders. Design your academic and administration processes around involving these students. That is the only and final verdict which I wanted to share. So when they got B, they were scoring, there was CGPA score out of 4 point was 2.51 to 2.75, and they got B+, right? So what are the final takeaways if you wanted to conclude it? NAAC is a highly strategic and a process oriented. So don't go without reading the manual, right? It requires a lot of effort in reading the university manual and institutional manual to develop the clear understanding of what exactly NAAC is for and why you should go for NAAC. NAAC requires extensive documentation, and that's the reason that you should start working on the processes, both academic and administrative. NAAC guidelines are for building quality controls in the academic and administrative processes. When you say quality controls, you're talking about the implementation of the policies. How you wanted to. So NAAC takes your higher education institutions from a longer perspective, over a span of say 25 years or so. NAAC guidelines are for building transparency in academic and administrative processes. You cannot hide or and play with your students, right? NAAC guidelines should be viewed objectively and not subjectively. That's my submission. If your team comes up with their interpretation as per their convenience of fulfilling the work or the task which you have assigned, please drop that. Let's see it from objectively. NAAC guidelines are for all-inclusive holistic development of the students. That is for, again, it is for internalizing and institutionalizing of quality culture across the organization. NAAC is system-oriented and not goal-oriented. I just, again, lastly, I'm emphasizing on the point of objectivity is that, there was one criteria which C2 talks about, having smart classes. How it was interpreted by the team responsible for that criteria. They said that we need to build up smart classes, and they have shown a video which was shown in the Star Trek, where the monitor comes up on the desk and it has voice controls and all these type of things. So it was discussed with the chairman, and he says that how much does it cost? The overall cost was costing approximately 1 crore of rupees for building this type of a laboratory system. So when you really interpret what NAAC wants is your classroom should be equipped with the audio, video, internet facility where students can have a different learning environment, where you can show them the video, where you can lively stream the sessions for the students. But they do not want that when your students sit on a table, only then the desktop should appear and come up from the desk and so on and so forth. So this is the subjective interpretation of that particular group, which was responsible for C2. What I wanted is that let's look into the NAAC processes objectively. That is, without going for the convenience of getting it done or stretching it. I strongly say that avoid causation approach. That is, if we get this, only then we can get that. No, start with effectuations. Whatever resources, whatever things this higher education institution have as of now, they can compare it, what is required, identify the gap, and start working on what you have, not waiting for the gap to be bridged. It becomes too late. Let me leave you with the final word. As of now, if you look into it, UGC is strongly emphasizing in implementing the new education policy. Once it gets implemented across the universities, the next target would be to make it very mandatory and strongly for the higher education institutions to go for NAAC accreditation process. It becomes difficult for you at that point of time. I request all of you should start thinking from this perspective, and this is the right time that you should go for a NAAC accreditation process. And in this context, if in case you need any help or any guidance, please reach me at my mobile number and the email address, right? Thank you very much for your time.